Hey everybody, how's it going? So I'm getting into part 3 of my top 100 albums. I do appreciate all the positive comments that people have left, and it's interesting to see what some of your choices would have been. So anyway, today I'm going to cover 80 through 71. And let's start first off with number 80, Deep Purple, Machine Head. This is probably their most popular album. Obviously, Smoke on the Water is on here. Space Truckin', Highway Star were the big hits off here. Maybe I'm a Leo is another great one off this album. And I don't think it's overplayed. I know it's kind of cliche for people to say it is their favorite Deep Purple album. And it's not necessarily mine. There may be another Deep Purple still yet to come on my list, but I'm going to go with this one for number 80. Number 79, Black Sabbath, Sabotage. This was, some people would say, their last classic album with Ozzy Osbourne. Some people would even say it's their favorite. For me, not necessarily my favorite Black Sabbath, but this is definitely one of their heaviest albums. I love Symptom of the Universe. It's just got that great, powerful riff. Thrill of It All, Super Star, however you pronounce that, I don't know. Even the weird song like Am I Going Insane? I mean, this album just beats you over the head. Hole in the Sky is a great album opener. Not crazy about the album artwork on here, but there's no denying this is one of their best albums. And yeah, it was one of the ones that I came to kind of late. It wasn't one of the first Black Sabbath albums I discovered. And I really wasn't expecting to like it because I knew it was kind of a later Ozzy album, and I had read how their quality kind of dropped off when they started getting into drugs and cocaine and, overindulging in alcohol and whatnot. But it's still a heavy, heavy, great album. It doesn't lose any melody. And really, I don't feel like the next two albums were terrible. Not my favorites, but, I would agree, kind of Sabotage closed the curtain on what was 6 absolutely perfect albums for Black Sabbath. Number, 78? Losing track already. 78, Led Zeppelin 2. I mean, this album is just a classic. Any album that starts off with a whole lot of love. I mean, there's a reason why this is such a classic album. It got so many songs that wound up on the radio. Obviously, a whole lot of love, like I just said. What Is and What Should Never Be is classic. Ramble On, Livin' Lovin' Made, Thank You. It's just chock full of hits. And it's probably one of their heaviest moments. Speaking of heavy albums, Led Zeppelin 2, got to go with that. 77, going to get into a little more David Bowie with the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. This was kind of his androgynous period. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a concept album. I think people have said it is, and other people have said it isn't. But in some way, it's kind of got a loose concept about this androgynous singer, Ziggy Stardust, who was sent to save the planet, which only had 5 years before it destructed or something happens. I don't know. I really don't know the whole backstory behind it. But, I mean, Suffragette City is on here. Obviously, the title track. Lady Stardust is great. And this is on, I don't know if this is the original label. This is on kind of a later RCA label, but I mean, no denying it's a classic album. Moon Age Daydream is a classic. Starman, just excellent. And those are all just the radio tracks. I mean, you got some deep cuts on here like Rock and Roll Suicide, Hang On to Yourself, which are also excellent. And I really consider this to be David Bowie's classic period. Like, he could do no wrong. And this was really, if you consider Hunky Dory and then Ziggy Stardust and then Aladdin Sane, 3 of maybe his best albums, or at least the best albums of his early period. You might even lump in The Man Who Sold the World. That's a great album too. Number 70, what are we on? I can't even keep track here. So we got 80, 79. 76. 76, going to go with the Police, Regatta de Blanc. And some would say this suffers because, especially on side 2, you've got some Stuart Copeland compositions, which are a little bit silly, a little bit lighter weight. You know, On Any Other Day is a little bit goofy. Does Everyone Stare? Does Everyone Stare? Yeah, Does Everyone Stare? Stuart Copeland. I think Contact was an Andy Summers composition. But I don't care. I really like these songs on here. I mean, you got Message in a Bottle, Regatta de Blanc, which is an instrumental. I don't mind that. I mean, it's the Police. The song kicks ass at the end. I love how it kind of builds. It's All Right for You is almost kind of a slice of punk rock. Bring On the Night. I love just the instrumentation and how tight they were. They could do reggae, they could do punk, they could do just straight up rock and roll. Walking on the Moon is on here. No Time This Time is great. The Beg's Too Big Without You is such an underrated Police classic. And this is a solid, solid album. I don't care what any critic tries to say. Number 75. Katie lied, Steely Dan. This was my first introduction to Steely Dan, except for the stuff I'd heard on the radio, like Ricky Don't Lose That Number, Do It Again, Reeling in the Years, that kind of stuff. And I really hadn't heard anything off of there. There's not any radio hits off here when you think about it, and yet it was one of my favorite Steely Dan albums. Black Friday, what a cool way to kick off the album. Bad Sneakers, Daddy Don't Live in That New York City No More has got such a classic groove. You got some jazz influences on here, particularly on, you know, Any World That I'm Welcome To. Chain Lightning's a cool, funky track. Throwback the Little Ones. I love that little piano coda at the end. Is such a great way to kind of wind down what's a great album. Everyone's Gone to the Movies is very cool. Almost a little bit of a calypso kind of rhythm there, which I dig. But yeah, Becker and Fagan, they were still kind of using a core set of musicians rather than just kind of auditioning studio musicians to play on their records like they would do on Asia and Gaucho. But love this. Love the cover artwork too. How many rock and roll covers have a praying mantis close up on their cover? But anyway, 74. Am I right? Yeah, 74. I'm back on track. Duran Duran, 7, and the Ragged Tiger. Now, I've heard people say, well, this is kind of a step down from Rio. No, it's not. This album is awesome. You got the MTV video hits and radio singles, The Reflex, New Moon on Monday, Union of the Snake. But for me, it's the tracks that never got played, kind of what we call like the deeper tracks. I'm Looking for Cracks on the Pavement is excellent. I Take the Dice is cool. Of Crime and Passion, I mean, for crying out loud. Shadows on Your Side, even that weird kind of moody, synth-heavy instrumental Tiger Tiger. Seventh Stranger. This is my favorite Duran Duran album. I don't care what anybody says. Not to take anything away from Rio, not to take anything away from the Wedding album or their debut, but for me, it never got any better than this one. All right, now we are on 73. And you might be wondering, well, we haven't seen any Beatles. What is going on? How can we be this deep into your list and not have any Beatles? Well, I'm still not showing any Beatles. How you like that? Except I am going to show a solo Beatle. It's going to be McCartney, Paul McCartney's, I don't know if we call it his debut solo album. He did have a soundtrack album for the family way back in 1967. And this was an entirely self-produced. He plays every instrument on this, which is amazing when you hear a track like Maybe I'm Amazed, and then less amazing when you hear tracks kind of like Valentine's Day or Hot as Sun, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, they do kind of sound like Paul demos, but it's a very cool album. It was a real gutsy album for Paul to come out with this album, his first solo album after the Beatles, when he was known for coming out with like Hey Jude and Let It Be, Long and Winding Road, these epic, epic tracks. And the only real epic song that we have on here is Maybe I'm Amazed, but you do have a lot of really cool, rewarding tracks. Every Night, Anybody? anybody, even the stuff that's a little repetitious, like he couldn't think of any more lyrics like that, would be something where he just kind of repeats the whole, that would be something to see in the falling rain, like ad nauseum. I even a track like that, I like. Mama Miss America is a great instrumental, although, nobody's going to mistake this for Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's Paul playing all the instruments, and this is not the first time Paul tried an experiment like this. Why Don't We Do It in the Road is entirely Paul McCartney off the White Album. He played every instrument on that. So he was kind of laying the groundwork for an album like McCartney on the White Album. But I still think this is a very cool album. Not my favorite, but I still think it was a very gutsy album to come out with. Number 72, back into a little new wave. Gonna go with Infected by the Matt Johnson, pretty much his sort of solo venture. But this is really an underrated album of the 80s. Out of the Blue, Into the Fire is so cool. Nina Cherry is on Slow Train to Dawn. If you remember who Nina Cherry is, anybody who remembers Buffalo Stance back in the early 90s, Man-Child, but Heartland, Angels of Deception. This is another artist who started out very much synth pop and then really kind of started branching out, expanding his sound. This does not sound anything like synth pop. And it's weird to think this is almost essentially a solo record by him, because it's got a lot of really interesting textures on here, a lot of instrumentation, very cool playing. Check it out. Check out the. If you're like, who is the? This album will not disappoint, I guarantee it. And I love the Mercy beat too. I love the way it ends. Again, I love when a band just doesn't kind of like, oh, there's the last song, kind of a throwaway. I mean, this is a very meticulously produced, finely crafted songwriting, and it's flawless from start to finish. Wish I could have ranked it higher. And number 71, let's do a little Roxy music, Siren. I heard this on the radio once, and it was back in the 80s where, even then, it was very rare to have a DJ play an entire album. And I felt like I'm back in like the late 60s. I'd hear my uncles or, old hippies be like, well, back in the day, you could hear an entire album on the FM radio. Well, maybe I'm showing my age, but I did hear this on the radio. The only track I recognized was Love is the Drug. But holy crap. And I'm so sorry I have to rank this 70, because this album is just amazing. If you're only used to Roxy music from like Avalon, that album, More Than This, their later stuff, their early stuff kicks your ass. And I love how there's kind of at the beginning of this, you've got on the, it's the second song on here, End of the Line, goes right into Sentimental Fool. And then you got Whirlwind, which is just a crazy rocker. She Sells is a great piano based rhythm track. Could It Happen to Me? Both Ends Burning is almost kind of new wave disco-ish. And then Just Another High. I love how that track builds. But yeah, I mean, so many different styles on here, from country rock to progressive rock, to space rock, glam rock, just balls to the walls, heavy music on here. This was their 5th album. And yeah, I mean, they didn't have Brian Eno anymore, but I don't think they really lost a whole lot. And I freaking love this album. Check it out. Hope you're enjoying these. I don't know how many I got more. I got a couple more of these to do, but I'm having fun with it. I hope you are too. Let me know what you think of my picks. And if you've been sharing your picks with me as well, let's see them. All right, take care.